we are going to be trying to solve this one right now. So welcome everyone to this live solve. We're going to be using Onshape to perform a live solve here. You may notice that over on the left, you'll see some live chat coming in because our users are attempting to solve this model as well live, and we're going to try and solve it right here for all of you using Onshape. So welcome to this Onshape live solve. Today is Monday, June 30th. We are here in a live episode of Model Monday Live, and let's get into it here. We're going to go to tootalltoby.com. We're going to go here to get started. And once we go into get started, we see here it says featured challenge practice models. These are models that are available for anyone with a free account. And we just released this one just about 1 minute ago. And so now all of the users in our chat are trying to go through and trying to solve this. We're going to try and solve it here live for all of you using Onshape. So I'm going to say click here to practice. And I'm going to come down to the bottom here. We see the skills tested are going to be draft, patterns, revolve, slot tool, symmetry, and thin walls. We got a lot of skills that we could potentially be tested on in this challenge. We're going to say click here to begin and reveal drawing. What is the mass of this part in xxx.x grams? Now we are running against the clock, and we're trying to model against the other people here that are trying to compete, that are watching the live stream here live. However, I always think it's a good idea to kind of start by coming up with a game plan. So I'm going to click this button that says open in new window, make this thing just a little bit larger, a little bit easier to see. And now I'm going to start thinking through kind of what some of the different areas of this challenge are going to be. So one of the first things we always advise our students to do is start out by coming up with the location of the origin and what your very first sketch is going to look like. And so I think for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to approach this thing as a revolve, and I'm going to put my origin down here. And so my first sketch is going to look a little something like this. It's going to come over, over, and then it's going to come down like this. So these red lines here are going to be my first sketch, and I'm also going to add a center line, because if I add a center line, that's going to let me do what are called doubled dimensions. And I'm going to use that for dimensions like this 40 dimension here, or like this 120, the max OD. I'm going to include that as a double dimension as well. And so I'm going to be using that double dimension, that revolve sketch, and that's going to get revolved, that it's going to give me kind of this main shape here. Now, the challenge is going to be that now that I've got this main shape and it's all solid, how do I model up these little tabs here, this little tab that comes over and down? How do I model that up? And I think that the solution here, it's a little bit tricky, but I think the solution here is going to be to do that not as a solid feature, but do it as a cut feature. So I think that my second sketch is going to look something like this. I'm going to come up here and over here like this, or maybe I missed that one line there a little. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to come down here like this. In fact, I could even make that second sketch just a rectangle, and then I could add this 20 dimension here, again from a center line, and add this 20 dimension here, and then I could perform a cut extrude that goes up and into the model and kind of hollow that out a little bit. And that's going to give me a sharp corner right here that I could maybe fill it, and a sharp corner here that I could fill it. I could even at this point add in the hole if I wanted to and do a pattern, or I could do that hole as a secondary feature and just add all four. We'll see what I end up doing there with that one. And then finally what I'll do is I will create one final sketch which will represent this kind of interior shape here. You can see that in this interior shape we've got a 6mm wall and a 6mm wall. So I think my final sketch is going to look a little something like this. I'm going to come down, over, all the way down at an angle, back in, and then up like so, and cut that thing off and just revolve that thing. So that's my game plan. I know that I took a couple of minutes to do that, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I know that we're on the clock here. I know that we're battling against these wizards in the chat. So I'm going to go into my keyboard cam here so you guys can see all the keyboard shortcuts that I'm using. I'm going to move this drawing over onto my second screen, and I'm going to jump into Onshape and see if I can solve this thing. So here we are in Onshape, and I'm going to choose to create a new document here in Onshape. Oops, let me put this up here. And I've already come up with the game plan. I think it's really important to start with a game plan. If you agree, hit the like button on this video. And once I've got that game plan in place, now I'm ready just to execute on that game plan and follow those steps. So I'm going to say create document. I'm going to call this 25-06-10, and I'll call this CONEY part. And this is going to be stored here in the public space in Onshape. So if you have a free Onshape account, onshape.com/free, you could look up my model, you could make a copy of it, and then you could start poking through the feature tree. You know, if you ever get stuck, even if you're using a different CAD system, if you ever get stuck, that's gonna help you out. That's gonna make it a lot easier for you to get unstuck when you can see somebody else's completed 3D model. So 25-06-10, CONEY part, create public document. And the first thing I'll do here is just go into my this hamburger menu here. And the only reason I do this is just to make sure that my units are correct. Now, I know that in my Onshape profile, my default units are millimeters and my default mass is grams. But just in case you didn't know how to change your workspace units, now you know. And let me know down in the comments if you didn't know how to do that. And so now I'm going to follow my game plan. Front plane, S key, begin a sketch, N key to get normal 2, S key to begin a line, single click, move a line over here, approximately 60 millimeters. I'm not going to dimension this because I'm going to do that with a double dimension. Then I'll come up here, and this one I will dimension. That's going to go up to a height of, you know what, I think I'm going to bring this up to 6. And then I'm going to create another line here that comes up to 8. And you'll see in just a moment why I'm doing that. Mainly what I want to do is I want to set myself up so that I can create an offset plane here right to that point. Now, I know all the Onshape users are going to say, you know, you don't have to create a plane. You could just extrude from that offset location. And you're right, I could do that. But I think I'm just going to do it with an explicit plane just to make it a little bit easier to kind of understand what's going on. So come up here like so, create that second line there. One of those lines is at 6, one of those lines is at 8. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another line here that comes over, one that comes up, one that comes over, and then I will close off that sketch. Now I am going to make an additional line down below here, and for this line I'm going to press Q. And that changes that line into a construction line. And the reason that's important is because now I can hit escape, press the S key, press dimension, and then I can dimension from this point to the line itself. And now you'll see that here I can cross over that line. So when I made that pick on the point, it doesn't matter if I pick the point or if I pick the line, but here I have to pick the line. If you pick the end point or the end point, it's not gonna work. You gotta pick the line. So I pick that line, I move my mouse over that line, and then I click in the background, let go of my mouse, 120, enter. I pick this line, this point here. I pick this line. I move my mouse over that line, and that gives me that doubled dimension, which is really handy when you're doing revolved parts. 40, enter. And then I'm gonna pick this line down here and this line, single click in the background, 105, enter. And then finally, I'm gonna pick this line here and this line. I don't think I can do a doubled angle dimension in Onshape, at least not yet. So I'll just drop in this angle here and I'll type in the total angle 20/2. And there we go. If anybody out there knows if there's a way to make that double in the sketch without having to draw the extra line over there, let me know. You know, I would love to know, and I would love to learn how to do that. So now that I've got that geometry in place, now I am going to choose to revolve. So I'm going to go here to revolve. And once I go to revolve, I'm going to say that I want my entire sketch to be used. So I don't really have to pick anything in this box, but I do have to come down here and pick in this box for revolve axis. And then I can either choose the construction line or the solid line here. I'll choose the construction line. That just feels intuitive. So I hit the check mark, and now I'm going to go back to that sketch 1, and I'm going to show that sketch 1. And once I show that sketch 1, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick this plane. So I pick the top plane, and I'm going to pick this point. Remember I made that sketch where the first line was 6 and then the second line was 8? Well, I'm going to pick that point there. So you can see that my cursor is showing me that I've got 2 things selected. Well, now that I've got those 2 things selected, I can choose reference geometry plane, or I can choose the plane command here. And Onshape is smart enough to realize, oh, you're probably trying to make a plane parallel to the top plane and coincident to that vertex. We call that a plane point. So I didn't have to go into this list here and choose what type of plane I want to create. It just automatically knew, because I picked a plane and because I picked a point, plane point, so we can hit the check mark. So that workflow can become really streamlined. If I click cancel there, nothing is selected. I pick this point, I pick this plane, S key, plane, green check mark. Boom. Now I've got a plane exactly where I want it. And so now I can pick on that plane, S key, begin a sketch, N key to get normal 2, S key, jump into a rectangle command. And I'm going to create a rectangle here that's going to go from here to here, like so. And the distance for this rectangle is kind of arbitrary. What you could do is you could hold Alt while you're sketching this. And what that does is, instead of making a rectangle, it makes this a square. So that's like a little hidden shortcut in Onshape. You can hold Alt when you're making a rectangle. And then when you click in the background, you let go of your mouse, you let go of Alt, and then you type in the distance. Again, this is going to be arbitrary, so I'll just type in 100. It really doesn't matter what that distance is. All I need to do is make sure that that rectangle is over here on this side of the sketch. And so then what I can do is I can choose to create a line. So S key line from the origin, come over here and I'll press Q, makes that construction. Then I'll do another line here from the origin straight down, press Q, make that construction. And then what I'll do is I will create a dimension here that goes from this line to this line and cross over. Now, this isn't really a revolve. It's not really a diameter, but what's nice is that I can type in the full value there of 20. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Click here, cross over to here, type in the value there of 20. And what's nice about that is that, you know, again, it's not a revolve, it's a mirrored part or it's a patterned part, but it's pretty cool that you're able to take your geometry and you're able to actually create that doubled information when you anticipate doing a mirror downstream, or when you anticipate doing a pattern, a circular pattern downstream. So that is the smart dimension on that. I love in the chat, I see Victor K says, wow, I learned something new. That's awesome. I'm very glad that you were able to learn here. Victor K is an absolute master in Onshape. So always nice when we're able to teach him, to show him something new here. And I'm assuming that that's probably the Alt shortcut for those rectangles. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that geometry and I'm going to extrude it. So S key extrude, this is going to be a remove, and I'll say reverse direction here. And that extrude is going to go up to 66 minus 6, or I could create a reference up there, something like that. But I'll just do 66 minus 6 to account for that 6 millimeters down at the bottom. And there we go. That gives us that cut there. Now what I could do is I could take this edge here, S key fillet, and drop a fillet here on this edge. We'll make that fillet a radius of 10, enter, and on this edge here as well, make that a radius of 10, hit the check mark, and then I could jump into a circular pattern here in Onshape. So when I jump into the circular pattern here in Onshape, what I could do is I could say I want this to be a feature pattern. Remember, you got to go up to the top here and fly out this menu when you're doing a pattern. Fly out that menu and you can choose feature pattern instead of part pattern. Feature pattern, and then the feature that I'm going to pattern is going to be that rectangular cut. So we're going to create a pattern of that rectangular cut. And what's that going to end up looking like? Well, let's click in here. We'll take a look in here at this axis of pattern, and we'll choose this circular edge here. And there we go. We can kind of see what that's going to look like. And then we also want to pattern our fillet. So up here where it says features to pattern, you want not only that cut, but you also want the fillet to be selected there. And then finally, whenever we see red here, we see we've got red in the tree, and we see we've got red over here in the pattern. That's indicating that the pattern is not going to work. And you guys might remember, we've talked about this before, if that ever happens, if you ever do a pattern in Onshape and it doesn't work, the very first thing you want to do is just click this option here for reapply features. Because in my experience, probably 95 to 98% of the time, just clicking that reapply features resolves the issue. Really simple resolution there to that issue. So you just click reapply features, the red goes away, the pattern previews correctly, we hit the check mark, and oh yeah, that part is looking good. I'm liking that. So you'll notice here that we showed this sketch here, this sketch that's kind of running down the side. Let me come over here to the name of the part, right click. I'm going to say edit appearance. And then once I say edit appearance, I'm just going to make this look a little bit more like the part that the customer gave us. That also makes it a little bit easier to see this line. So you'll notice that earlier we showed this sketch so we could reference this point, but I left the sketch shown, and that's going to help me because now I could go into front plane, S key, begin a sketch, N key, get normal 2. And now what I can do is I can kind of finish off that plan of hollowing this thing out. So I'm going to do S key, begin a line. I'll create a line here that starts here. I want to be careful, right? Don't pick up the midpoint because this has a dimension. It's a 20 millimeter opening. So don't pick up the midpoint. Move over a little bit from that midpoint. Single click, I can move down. I could single click. I could type in 6, enter. I could move over this way, single click. I can move down at this angle. Sometimes you can, if you just hold your mouse over another line, like if I hold my mouse over this line that was shown here earlier, you can use that to kind of trigger the relationship. So see now I'm getting that nice parallel relationship for that line. So I can make that parallel, have it come all the way down here to the point where it's horizontal to the origin. So I'm getting parallel and I'm getting horizontal or coincident to that bottom line. You know, either way, it's going to give me what I want there. But it's important you just picking up on that parallel. Single click, move over here to the origin, single click, move up to the top here, single click. And then I'll make close this thing off with one final line across the top here, like so. And then I'll make one more line and we'll make this one vertical and we'll press Q again. And the reason we're doing that is for the same reason we did it earlier. We make that line construction because it allows us to create a dimension here that goes from this line to this line and then cross over that line. And that way we can type in the dimension that the customer gave us, which is 18 millimeters through. So that gives us that 18 millimeter hole through the top. And then all we need to do is add in this dimension here for the other 6 millimeter wall. Boom, there we go. Very nice. And now we can take that geometry and do a revolve. So revolve, just like we did earlier, we did a revolve. Our revolve axis is gonna be, so we click here, from here, we click down here into this box, come down there. So our revolve axis is going to be this axis here, and then this time it's going to be a remove. So in Onshape, when you're adding material, it's add. When you're removing material, it's remove. It's all in that one single command. That's nice because then later on, if you wanted to, you could change a remove to an add. You could edit a feature and change that from one to the other, or even change it into a surface or some other type of feature. So I'm going to be doing a remove here, click the green check mark, and there we go. And then the final thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to hide that original sketch. So hide that sketch there. I could also press P if I wanted to hide my planes. So I could press P here. That lets me hide my planes. And then once I do that, then what you can see here is that I can choose the whole command. And in the whole command, this is going to be a countersink. And what I like to do is I just like to use the tab key here. So I click down in this box that says diameter. So this box right here that says diameter, and then I type in the diameter from the drawing. So that diameter is 7 millimeters through, and then I press tab, 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 and this is going to be 14 millimeters for the OD of the countersink, and then tab, and then this is going to be 90 degrees. So I like using the tab key to go through and kind of quickly populate those whole tables or those whole property managers. And then the other thing that I'm going to do here is here where it says sketch points to place holes. Well, instead of using sketch points, I'm going to click this button, which is to use the mate connectors. So I click this button here, and then that lets me just go out and pick the center of each of those arcs. So you just kind of put your mouse out there until it highlights in the correct location, and that's going to let you quickly pick the center of each of those arcs. And then we can hit the green check mark, and wow, that's looking good. So I think it's a real testament to Onshape that, you know, week after week we come in here and we create these tutorials live. We do these live solves, and you know, Onshape never crashes or anything like that. It's never locked up on me while I'm doing one of these live solves, and we're always able to kind of get through. Even though sometimes we run into hiccups or things like that, we're always able to get through. We're able to learn new things about the platform, about Onshape, and it's just a lot of fun to be able to kind of demonstrate this here live for all of you guys week after week. So the final thing we need to do here to get this answer correct, because the clock is still running, we need to come over here. We need to click on the name of this part. We need to say assign material. And this material is going to come from the custom Too Tall Toby materials library. Now, I do have a video on how to access or how to create your own custom materials library and how to access the library that I've posted. But from the custom Too Tall Toby materials library, this part is made from 1060 aluminum. We're going to hit the green check mark, and then we're going to come down here in the corner and we're going to click on this icon to measure the mass. So the mass of this part is going to be coming out at 330.3 grams. So let's go back into the Too Tall Toby app here. And here we go. We're going to type in the mass here, 330.3, and enter. And oh yeah, we did it. We got it correct. Anytime we see that purple box show up, that purple box lets us know that we got it correct. It always feels so good. Sometimes I see people in the Discord saying whenever they see that purple box, it feels good. So that is the correct answer, 330.3 grams. And upon submission, we're going to be awarded 1 point on the community scoreboard. So we're going to say submit. And there we go. We got it correct. So let me know in the comments, let me know down below, you know, how you did it, if you did it the same way or if you took kind of a different decision tree. Let me know if you learned any cool tips and tricks. But now we are back here to the live app during this live stream. And while I was solving that, 11 people in the chat went through and solved that model as well. So congratulations to everybody who was able to get through and who was able to solve that. And let's take a look at our first 42 and see who the first person was to solve that model. So we see here that the model was released at 1:33 p.m. and it was Victor K, CSWE Victor. Victor was our world champion of 3D CAD speed modeling using SolidWorks back in 2023. Well, now Victor has converted over to Onshape and his speed continues. Just goes to show that it's just as much the wizard as it is the wand. And Victor was able to complete that model 3 minutes and 46 seconds seconds from the time it was released. Victor was followed here by Gray, who was using SolidWorks, who finished that model 5 minutes and 57 seconds. Gray from Russia. Very nicely done, my friend. And we see that Rambro's Workshop, another former world champion, finished in 5 minutes 59 seconds, followed here by Matab from Bangladesh. Oh, Rambro's Workshop, of course, using Fusion. It's kind of cool. The top 3 finishers here in our top 42 are using 3 different CAD systems. I like that. So we see here that Matab finished it using SolidWorks 7 minutes and 40 seconds.